Welcome back to the second of these videos about the images and vocabulary used in Waka poetry about the season of winter. We're having a cold snap in Sheffield at the moment, so talking about winter seems the right thing to do. In this video, I'm going to discuss topography, lifestyle and events, leaving animals and plants for part 3. Let's get started. The single most important topographical feature associated with winter is mountains, fuyu no yama in Japanese. As I'm sure you know, Japan is generally a mountainous country, and even today much of the population lives in valleys or the few flatter areas near the coast. Kyoto, Japan's ancient capital, sits in a basin surrounded by mountains, and so they're in view from almost anywhere in the city, and getting from anywhere from Kyoto generally involved passing through mountain passes or following roads which crossed over their shoulders. While the climate around the capital area is such that it doesn't get the extremely heavy snowfall which other parts of Japan do, it could still be heavy enough to make travel in winter difficult and unpleasant, and the sights and sensations of mountains covered in snow were familiar to the capital aristocrats, and these found their way into their poetry. For example, topic unknown. Miwataseba, matsu no hashiroki yoshi no yama, iku yo tsumoreru yuki ni garu ran. When I gaze across, the pine needles are white in the mountains of Yoshino. How many nights has it been drifting, the snow, I wonder. Tadami's poem doesn't mention the season explicitly, but the reference to snow clearly situates this as a winter poem. He also brings in the famous Utamakura, poetically significant place name, of Yoshino. In slightly later periods, Yoshino became almost synonymous with cherry blossom, but at this time a wider range of associations, pine and snow, were possible. Topic unknown. Sazanami ya shiga no karasaki kaze saete hira no takane ni arare furu nari. Wavelets wash Karasaki and Shiga, and the wind is chill, so on the high peaks of Hira the hail must be falling. The various place names in this poem tie it to a particular location, the western shore of Lake Biwa, which lies to the northeast of Kyoto. Capital aristocrats would easily be able to identify this and so recognise the scene, as it lay on the lakeshore not far from the monastic complexes of Mount Hiei, which was a regular location for pilgrimages. Again, Tadamichi doesn't explicitly identify the season, but the reference to hail, arare, supplies this. The second topographical feature associated with winter is withered plains, kareno. This term referred to land which was neither forested nor cultivated for rice, and generally flat where the plant life, grasses, bushes and the like, had died away or died back with the winter. This term often brought its associations of desolation to poetry on topics other than the seasons, as in, when going somewhere sunk in thought, she saw a burning field by the road and composed this. Fuyugare no nobe to wagami o omoiseba, moete mo haru o mata mashi mono o. Withered in winter are the fields, and I, were I the same, then though I burn, the spring might be something to await. The implication of Ise being sunk in thought, as mentioned in the headnote, is that she is depressed because she's been unlucky in love. The burning field that Ise sees is being burnt back to get rid of old growth and prepare it for spring, and thus there is a point to it being on fire. Her own burning is her love for the man who has abandoned her. If there was some chance that her love would be requited and the man would change his mind, there might be some purpose to how she feels. But she knows, in fact, that this is pointless. The same air of sadness is taken up by the monk Saigyo in one of his most famous poems. When he was passing through the fields, having gone down to Michinoku, he saw an impressive tomb and asked whose it was. He was told it was the tomb of the captain. On asking which captain, he was told they meant Sanekata. It was winter, and he absently noted the miscanthus grass all around was withered by the frost, and feeling that there was nothing there that suited the time. Kuchi mo senu, sono na bakari o todome okite, kare no no susuki, katami tozo miru. Imperishable, his name alone remains left here. The frost-burned field of miscanthus will be my keepsake. Fujiwara no Sanekata was a nobleman and poet who died in a riding accident in Michinoku, far to the north of the capital, after he had been sent there under something of a cloud. You can find more information about him on www.wakapoetry.net, and if you're particularly interested in him and his poetry, I've translated his complete personal collection, and it's available in paperback, hardback, and Kindle format from your local Amazon. Saigyo's poem cleverly links the imperishable Kuchi mo senu, name of Sanekata, with the withered kare, miscanthus, as the kuchi element derives from the verb kutsu, meaning rot, which is something one more usually associates with plants. Sanekata's tomb is stone, but will, of course, be worn away over the years. The miscanthus is dead now, but will return with the spring, which Sanekata will never do. The poem is a meditation on mortality and the relative positions of humanity and nature. Withered fields was also one of the formal topics assigned for composition in the poetry contest in 600 rounds, Ropyakuban Utawase, in 1193-94, and the poems there give a good sense of its seasonal usage, I think. Samushiro ni nobe asanagara nari nuran, shimonishi karenu kusa no hazo naki. Has a blanket of chill across the fields been laid? By frost unburned, is there not a single grassy leaf? The seasonal component is provided by the reference to frost, shimo, which has withered, karenu, the plants in the fields. Fuyu fukuru nobe o miru ni mo, omoizuru kokoro no uchi wa hana zo iroiro. In the depths of winter, gazing o'er the fields, what I recall within my heart are the blossoms' many hues. Here, Iefusa refers directly to winter, but leaves it up to his audience to infer the state of the fields from their common sense. I expect you've worked out that the common features of Withered Fields poems from these examples. There's a seasonal reference, either explicitly to winter or to some weather-related phenomenon associated with it. A reference to plants, again, either generically or a specific one, and then an overall mood of sadness, although some poets do work in an anticipation that spring is on the way, as is the case with many winter-themed poems. The next winter feature is one which we might think of as more weather-related, but is considered a topographical feature in Japan: ice, kori. This is due to it being something solid which changes the shape of things, rather than covering them like snow or hail does. If you think of the last video, you'll remember Eigyo's poem equating the winter moon with ice, so you'll be aware of ice's entirely unsurprising association with cold in Waka. Here's a similar effort by Fujiwara no Toshinari, Shunzei. When His Majesty requested a 100-poem sequence, he composed this as an ice poem. Tsuki sayuru kori no ue ni arare furi, kokoro kudakuru Tamagawa no sato. The moon so bright upon the ice hail falls, breaking my heart in my Tama River home. This poem is a combination of hard, sharp images. The winter moon throws everything into relief, reflecting back from the surface of the ice, but as the scene is shattered just as the ice is by a sudden hailstorm. The beauty is destroyed, and the destruction of that serene beauty is linked to whatever event it is that has so disrupted Shunzei's heart. Topic unknown. Iwama ni wa kori no kusabi uchite keri, tamaishi mizu no mo, ima wa morikozu. In between the rocks a wedge of ice has been forced. Jewels of water wet nothing now. Here we see another similar image of hardness provided by Sone no Yoshitada. The setting is clearly a frozen stream, where instead of the water flowing between the rocks, there is a wedge of ice. This poem is a little unusual, as it's associating an active action to a natural phenomenon, the ice being forced between the rocks. This particular usage implies that there must be something which has done this, as opposed to it simply happening naturally of its own accord, which is a more standard way of expressing natural phenomena in Waka. The image of the change that ice brings to bodies of water is one which is consistently used in Waka on this topic, as in the following poem on the topic of ponds from Eikyu Hyakushu. Fuyu samumi niodori sudaku hara no ike mo yonu musuboru uru kori shi ni keri. In the winter's chill, even the waterfowl cluttered ponds upon the plain have grown thick at night with frozen ice. This poem encapsulates the idea of winter in Waka, I think. We have an explicit mention of the season, including a reference to its cold. This segues into a reference to water, followed by night, the core time of day for winter, and concludes with a reference to the ice which the cold has brought. Finally, in this section on topography, we have a related topic to that of ice, icicles, surara, or taruhi. This is not an extremely frequent topic for winter Waka, but it was considered wintry enough that it was assigned as one of the winter topics in Horikawa Hyakushu, dating from 1106, a semi-official poetic collection containing 100 poem sequences by 16 of the best-known poets of the day. Here are 3 of the poems on icicles to give you a sense of this topic. Nami kakuru iwama hima naku taruhi shite kori tojitaru yamakawa no mizu. Waves hang from every single space between the rocks, in icicles. Sealed in ice is the water of this mountain stream. Tsuraraite mamoru iwama no seki nareba, yohete kataku naremasaru kana. Icicles hang, warding the space between the rocks and forming a barrier, so as the night goes by, their hardness grows even greater. Yamazato wa tani no shitamizu tsuraraite, iwa utsu nami no otodani mo sezu. At a mountain retreat, the waters in the valley below have turned to icicles, and of waves striking the rocks, there is no sound at all. As you have no doubt recognised, the core connotations for icicles are very similar to those for ice, of blocking and changing water. Akisue and Morotoki both follow this pattern, and I find Morotoki's poem to be particularly affecting, as he skillfully brings in the way in which ice can bring silence to a scene through the way it changes water from liquid to a solid. I can certainly envisage a mountain temple, which normally echoes to the sound of the river rushing by, brought to silence on a winter morning when the water freezes. Toshiori Yoshunrai, in his keeping with his status as an innovator, takes a different approach, emphasizing how repeated cold weather can make ice thicker and more durable. He does, though, manage to bring in a conventional mention of night, and thus reassuringly situates his poem within the scope of winter. Many aspects of life were pretty much on hold during the winter in pre-modern Japan, and people's main concerns were hunkering down and making sure they could keep warm and have enough to eat. This sense of a pause was also felt in the natural world, with the result that there were poems composed on the topic of being fuyugomori, a term which literally means imprisoned by winter. The standard use for this expression was in poems describing trees which would blossom in the spring, but which were bare and seemingly lifeless in winter. For example, composed on snow falling to cover the trees. Fuyugomori, omoi kakenu o, kono ma yori, hana tomiru made, yuki zo furikeru. Buried in winter, how unexpected it is, between the trees, to imagine flowers in the fallen snow. Tsurayuki here foreshadows a common Kokinshu spring topic of elegant confusion between whether the poet is viewing blossom or snow between the trees in springtime. But in this poem there is no doubt. The poet is seeing snow, and all he can do to give himself some cheer is think of the blossom that will come. Fuyugomori karete miyuran. Umigae wa ima hata hana no haru wa niowan. Sealed in winter and all withered seeming, the plum tree's branches, now for sure the blossoms spring will scent. The anonymous author of this poem uses a similar image. Snow has fallen upon the plum tree, covering its branches with snow which looks like blossom, but which, unlike the blossom, lacks any scent. There's a sense of longing in the poet's words. Surely after so long there must be some signs of spring, but they know that this is not the case. In terms of topics related to human life and associated with winter, there were only two which were often referred to in Waka, and both of these referred to ways of keeping warm. In fact, I've already mentioned one of them in a poem I cited earlier, Samushiro, which could be translated as mats or blankets in some context. As this suggests, a samushiro was a woven mat of straw which could either be slept upon to provide additional comfort or pulled over one to provide additional warmth. The main reason it was so productive in Waka, with a winter theme, was because the initial three syllables, samushi, were homophonous with the adjective meaning cold, and so it was fertile ground for wordplay. As samushiro were used as bedding, this almost inevitably meant that they evoked ideas of sleeping together, and thus they were frequently used in crossover poems between winter and love. Here's an example of a poem by Teika, which is formally a love poem, but which has a strong winter theme. Wasurezu wa nareshiso demo ya koru ran, nenuyo no toku no shimo no samushiro. If she has forgot me not, might these so familiar sleeves as mine be frozen, a sleepless night abed, frost forming on my mat of straw. The sleepless night the poet is spending is obviously a winter one, due to the mentions of freezing, the samushiro, which reinforces the sensation of cold, and the reference to frost. There's some additional wordplay in the original which I have omitted in the translation, in that shimo can be both frost and below. Thus, toko no shimo no samushiro means both the frosty mat where I sleep and the cold mat below my bed. Here's a rather sensual example by Kensho from the poetry contest in 600 rounds. Ide ni keru kimi ga yodoku no samushiro ni hitori ne shite ya hada o furemashi. Departed is he from our bed tonight, so on his blanket should I sleep alone, might I touch his skin? It has to be said that neither the participants nor Shunze the judge much liked this poem, and criticised it for being too jocular, as well as a lack of clarity as to whether it was in the voice of a woman missing a man, which is how I've translated it, or a man missing a woman. Nevertheless, the use of samushiro does provide a sense of the chill that the speaker feels when faced by an empty bed. The other lifestyle-related winter topic for Waka was bedding, fusuma. Incidentally, I'm saying Waka here deliberately because in later periods and later types of poetry, such as haiku, there was a significant proliferation of winter lifestyle topics. As I think I've said before, the Heian nobility didn't really use bedclothes, in the sense that they didn't change into other clothing especially for sleeping in, nor did they use futon-type mattresses or other coverings to keep themselves warm when they slept. Instead, both men and women would simply remove and spread out their outer clothing and sleep beneath that, with one of the most common images of romantic love in Waka being of sleeping together beneath both lovers' robes, and conversely, one of the most common images of loneliness being that of sleeping beneath a single garment. Thus, it was only in the depths of winter, when their houses were at their coldest, that some extra warmth was needed, and this was provided by fusuma. These could be made from various fabrics, such as silk, if you were wealthy, or hemp, if you were not. As a piece of diction, fusuma occurs early in the Waka tradition, in a number of poems in the 10th century collection Kokin Rokujo. Atsubusuma, Nagoya ga shita ni netaredomo, imotoshi nenaba, hadae samushimo. Piled high my bedding and soft beneath where I lie and sleep, yet I sleep not with my darling, so my skin feels a chill. This poem is clearly a love poem, so it seems that at this time Fusuma was not definitively associated with winter, although the reference to cold is a suggestion of the time of year when they would be used. By the early 12th century, however, Fusuma were more definitively a winter topic. Fuyu samumi shimo sayoyo wa akenuredo asabusuma koso nugare zari kere. How cold this winter and chill the frost this night. It lightens, yet by hempen bedding I have not stripped off. Akinaka builds up to the mention of Fusuma, Busuma, with a veritable smorgasbord of other winter diction. The explicit reference to the season, the mention of cold followed by frost, chill, and night. All of these build up to the introduction of the bedding itself, so it acts as a counterweight, providing a sense of warmth to all the other elements. Kasaneneba, samuge narikeri, fuyu no yo ni, hitori fusuma, kaze mo tomarazu. If I fail to pile them high, how cold I feel on a winter's night, a single sheet, and a never-ending draught. Daishin provides a similar series of images of coldness and concludes with a plaintive complaint that a single fusuma is not sufficient to keep the chill out, although she's also hinting at the loneliness of sleeping alone, because the word hitori, which I have translated as single here, actually means both one person and alone, so she's saying sleeping alone when you're single won't keep you warm. It's a witty poem with the slightly ribald meaning hidden in the seasonal imagery. Others of the Eikyu Hyakushu poets were even less restrained. Nea no ue ni arare tabashiru yo wa naredo, imo to fusuma wa sayazu zo arikeru. Upon my bedroom hail scatters late this night, yet beneath the covers with my darling there is no chill at all. Kanemasa starts his poem with appropriate seasonal imagery, but then concludes with the idea of being warm with a lover. I could have made this translation here more explicitly erotic, as imo to fusuma wa sayazu could be my darling and my bedding have no chill. So this is the closest waka I found where a woman is described as hot by implication to mean passionate. Events is another general topic area which was not particularly productive for Waka, perhaps because so many of the court's activities and events were focused on the new year and the beginning of spring. In fact, probably the only significant winter event in Waka was the ceremony for the recitation of the Buddha's names, Butsumyoe, which took place over 3 days from the 15th day of the 12th month each year. During this ceremony, priests would recite the 11,093 names of the Buddhas past, present and future, as a way of atoning for the sins committed in the course of the year. Butsumyo, the names of the Buddhas, occurs as a winter topic in the early 11th century poetry contest held at the residence of Princess Miwako on the 22nd day of the 12th month. Shiwasu 20 nichi Miwako naishi no no ie no utawase. Arawaruru Mio no hotoke no naokiku ni tsumoreru tsumi wa shimo to kienamu. The manifest three worlds Buddha's names I hear, and my accumulated sins seem to vanish with the frost. Misako links the religious ceremony with the season through the use of the reference to frost, but it was more common in Waka on this topic to simply refer to the ceremony and allow readers' knowledge of when it took place to provide the seasonal association, as in this example from the early 12th century Eikyu Hyakushu. Sokubaku mo no hotoke no mina no mina kikeba nokoreru tsumi mo araji tozo omou. Numberless the Buddha's names, on hearing them all, our remaining sins seem to be gone, I feel. That's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, please like it if you did, and put any questions into the comments below. In the next video, I'll wrap up the season of winter and talk about the animals and plants most strongly associated with the season. See you then.